This morning, Donald Trump challenged Canada in a bold, public, and personal manner, launching a series of social media attacks and holding an impromptu press briefing where he called Mark Carney unappreciative, warned of the toughest financial penalties ever imposed on a so-called partner, and essentially provoked Canada to respond. Mark Carney didn't waste any time. In a matter of hours, he struck back, not with words, but with actions. A devastating triple-layered retaliation, a public debunking of Trump's claims using cold, hard facts, an immediate financial response aimed directly at Trump's voter base, and synchronized support from 5 partner nations, all of which came within 90 minutes of Carney's speech. By the time Wall Street closed for the day, the financial markets had already made their judgment. Carney had triumphed, and it wasn't even close. But the true story here is not about strategies or financial feedback. No, the real narrative is what this interaction revealed about the two figures. One arrived with insults, the other with a plan. One improvised during a press session, while the other unleashed a pre-prepared, finely tuned response that had been meticulously coordinated with allies to inflict maximum political damage with minimal financial cost. This wasn't a fair contest. It was spontaneity versus preparation, and preparation won, hands down. Warren Buffett's assessment of the situation was the sharpest observation he has made throughout this entire trade dispute. His remarks on the contrast between figures who react and those who anticipate, and the cost of that contrast to a nation, are something every citizen must hear. So stick with me, because this story changes how you understand the entire dispute. Here's how the day unfolded. At 6:30 this morning, a pre-recorded conversation with Mark Carney aired on Canadian Breakfast TV. It was then picked up by U.S. channels within the next hour. In the interview, Carney calmly discussed Canada's progress in diversifying trade, new agreements with the EU and Indo-Pacific nations, the construction of new energy export facilities toward Atlantic and Pacific ports, and Canada's partnerships that have restructured its economic framework in just under 2 years. The tone was even, evidence-driven, and subtle. The kind of interview that would normally get a brief mention on U.S. financial networks and little more. But one phrase cut through everything. Carney said, "Canada's financial destiny is no longer captive to the choices of any one trade partner. We have built a strong, diversified, independent economy, and we've achieved it in less than 2 years." Captive. One trade partner. He said aloud what no one had dared say before. Canada no longer needs the United States. Trump was watching Fox Business from the White House, according to sources, when this segment aired. He reportedly turned to an aide and asked, "Did you hear what this guy just said about us?" The aide hadn't seen it, but it didn't matter. Trump had already grabbed his device. By 7:15 a.m., Trump was firing off 6 posts in just 45 minutes. The first labeled Carney as the most unappreciative leader any nation had, claiming Canada would be nothing without the U.S. The next post accused Canada of exploiting America for years and said Carney was boasting about it. The third warned of the harshest financial penalties ever imposed on a partner. Shares 4 through 6 were more personal, attacking Carney's background at Goldman Sachs, labeling him a globalist, questioning whether he was even Canadian due to his tenure at the Bank of England, and asserting that Canada's economy was a disaster, surviving only because of U.S. generosity. 6 posts, 45 minutes, each one angrier and more illogical than the last, pushing Trump further into a corner. Each open threat requires action, and none of these threats had been thought through, evaluated, or coordinated with those who would need to carry them out. The head of Trump's National Economic Council reportedly learned about the posts when he saw an alert on his phone. The Secretary of Commerce found out when a reporter called asking for a reaction. The entire U.S. financial apparatus was caught completely off guard. No one in the administration had anticipated this. It was pure impulse, a complaint aired by a man with a device, shared before his own administration even had a chance to digest it. Then came Trump's live press briefing. At 8 a.m., just before leaving for a meeting, Trump doubled down on all the threats he had made earlier, this time speaking directly to cameras that broadcasted his words to the world. He went beyond social media posts and issued 3 specific financial warnings: possible banking restrictions on Canadian financial institutions operating in the U.S., an immediate halt on Canadian energy shipments, and the potential start of the U.S. exiting the USMCA agreement. None of these warnings had been discussed with the financial team ahead of time. None had been reviewed for legal feasibility. None had been analyzed for market effects or unintended consequences. One of Trump's top financial advisors, visible in the background, was reportedly on the phone just minutes after the briefing, scrambling to evaluate if the president's spontaneous promises were even legally viable. Another advisor was seen with their face in their hands. By the time Trump finished speaking, Canada had already prepared its response. And here's the trap he unknowingly set for himself. By issuing these threats publicly, Trump had tied his own hands. Retracting them would make him appear weak, and Trump never backs down. But going ahead with them meant enacting strategies his own team hadn't appraised, which, as Carney would soon demonstrate, would harm the U.S. more than Canada. Trump had put himself in a no-win scenario, and the other side hadn't even responded yet. Trump had issued these threats on a whim, uncoordinated, unexamined, and with no preparation. On the other hand, Carney's response had been carefully planned for weeks. His team had already anticipated this moment, and the counteractions were already in place. For the next 4.5 hours, there was total silence from Carney's side. No statements, no social media posts, no official responses. The media speculated endlessly. Trump supporters cheered, thinking Canada was too intimidated to respond. Fox News even aired a banner reading, "Canada quiet after Trump demand." Traditional analysts were quick to declare victory. They assumed Carney was afraid, but the reality was much different. Carney wasn't quiet because he was scared. He was silent because he was setting a trap of his own. At 12:30 p.m., Mark Carney delivered a 15-minute address from the Chamber of Parliament. It was calm, factual, and completely dismantled Trump's 3 financial threats. Carney didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult Trump. He didn't engage in the same petty back and forth. Instead, he used hard, verifiable facts to counter each of Trump's warnings. On the financial restrictions, Carney calmly explained that Canadian financial institutions hold $2.4 trillion in global assets and handle over $600 billion in cross-border transactions annually. Limiting them wouldn't hurt Canada. We would disrupt U.S. credit, mortgage processing, and business transactions. On the energy shipment threat, Carney pointed out that the U.S. imports 60% of its oil from Canada. A halt in shipments would raise U.S. fuel prices by an estimated $140 per gallon in just 30 days. He cited experts by name from Goldman Sachs, the IEA, and Wood Mackenzie to back up these figures. On the USMCA exit threat, Carney's legal team had already prepared a 14-page examination showing that withdrawal required 6 months' notice and active participation from Congress. Carney finished with a calm yet biting remark. "We recommend the president review the pact he endorsed. We're happy to send him a copy if he's misplaced his." And as he spoke, Canada had already triggered focused financial countermeasures, measures that were precise, effective, and carefully planned. These weren't broad, vengeful tariffs. They were targeted actions designed to hurt specific groups that Trump needs politically. One action targeted 6 U.S. farming regions with immediate potash shipment suspensions, affecting key Republican lawmakers in the Midwest. Another action created doubt in U.S. energy sectors by shifting shipping priorities away from U.S.-directed streams to Pacific and Atlantic routes. And a third measure rerouted $400 billion in Canadian pension funds from U.S. sectors toward European, Asian, and Commonwealth markets. By the time Carney finished speaking, 5 allied nations had already released synchronized public statements in support of Canada. The UK, Japan, the EU, Australia, and South Korea All sided with Canada, condemning the U.S.'s unilateral actions and reinforcing their commitment to working with Canada. This was no accident. Carney had prepared for this moment. He had anticipated Trump's moves, synchronized with global partners, and set the stage for this very response. Trump thought he was challenging Canada. Instead, he walked right into a trap set by a negotiator who had planned every move in advance. And this, ultimately, is the difference between the two figures. Trump reacted on a whim, while Carney responded with strategic precision. The world witnessed this difference today, and it's a lesson in what happens when readiness outmaneuvers impulse.